So we'll be live both on YouTube and on Twitter at the same time.
Nice. If I get an alert, I can read tweets.
Yeah, it should be hitting you up in a few seconds. So we are live. We are live. Sabaho, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I don't know how to introduce this video to start it without actually, smiling, like a big smile on my face. Welcome, my friend. Welcome, brother. Saf, how are you? How's your day? I mean, it's the evening, but how are you?
I am good. It's so good to see you face to face, brother.
I know.
It's been some time because of the lockdown. Usually we get to meet, and have a meal together.
Last year, this time we did actually roughly around. We did in San Francisco. Yeah,
we did, and it was amazing. Yeah. So this is the thing. I mean, I think that's the distance for me. Has been. I love the technology and the fact that we can still meet face to face. But
exactly.
I do miss that time where we can sit down together, have a really nice meal, and just catch up. Because that's for me, that's the highlight of traveling.
It is, and I think it's a big part that we actually appreciate. Also, is the fact that we get together. These are like our meetings, right? From a PR standpoint, obviously they're getting their coverage and so on. But for us, it's catching up, and then finding nice halal places in the middle of the night.
That's the best.
I either in Germany after IFA or in Mountain View, right around IO, and to me.
Yeah, please.
No. That's always the fun thing about it. Like whenever we land to a place and Saf is in the group, there's a trip for halal food. We have to go find some halal kebabs or something.
We still talk about when we were in Germany and we found that halal kebab place and it was so good.
Middle of the night, everything else is closed. The only place we could find, and it turned out to be Lebanese and
amazing.
The food was great, but it was the company too. I think that's 90% of the experience. It's we were walking around, we were enjoying it. But yes, welcome to the channel. Welcome to the Saturday morning with
Tech. Thank you for having me, man.
Yeah, and I see you're all set up for your gaming headset.
This is the headset that I go with.
Yeah. Oh man. I'm gonna be very honest with you. I've been practicing. A lot before I want to join on any of the games that you guys have been playing with Warfare. I feel like I'm not at that level yet, so I'm getting there, and I will be joining hopefully at some point. But every time I see some of those ground to air shots, and you're knocking somebody out of the when they're parachuting down, I'm like, I'm not at that level yet. I'm not there.
Well, let me give you a disclaimer that those are obviously a very select few shots which are shareable, but there's a lot that doesn't get shared. So, please do feel free to just join us just for a bit of a laugh. I mean, I think, again, with the lockdown, I think one of the good things has been for all of us guys just to kind of connect online, play a bit of Warfare. It's been so good, like just so much fun.
And there's a game like every day. So like every time I'm like sitting around, like, oh, jumping into a game, and you're staying up pretty late. So I know it's it's a passion of yours.
I'm practically on Eastern time right now. So
I was gonna say, you're living on the US, even though, no, definitely.
Pretty much.
How's the weather for you though? I saw somewhere on your Instagram that it's been raining on and off. Is that you guys are getting rain now?
Oh, it's the UK British weather. Oh, it's you hear us complaining all the time, but we actually had a heat wave, so it's been crazy hot. Now, one of the things I always talk about is our houses are built to keep heat in because generally it's quite a cold country, but no thanks to climate change, things have been drastically changing. So like the past few summers, it's been very, very hot. Now with our houses, they keep the heat in and there's no air conditioning. Air conditioning is not something that you have in UK houses. So it gets quite uncomfortable indoors. So yeah, but today it just kind of took a turn. It's still warm, but it was just thunder, rain, and then 2 minutes later it's bright and sunny. But that's the UK for you.
Oh man. I haven't experienced the only thing I've ever experienced in the UK have been hotels. So it's a different experience than coming in somebody's place. But I can imagine having that, no AC built into your homes. In LA, we have a few homes like that, but they're generally by the beach because they always get the cooler air.
Yeah, the breeze.
So that, but if I remember correctly, I think last year you were using your car, right? You edited a video in the car. That to me, the creativity is always there.
Well, first I want to say that next time you're in the UK, then please do visit. Come to my place. It'll be nice to have you for sure. So
inshallah,
you can experience the home life as well, inshallah. But yeah, so I think it was maybe a couple of summers ago. So I was at the time I was using the Dell Xperia 15, and that is very well known for its throttling. And as soon as temperatures get high, then it will throttle. So now when anytime I was exporting a video, I was just like, okay, this is impossible. So what I would have to do is I'd have to get into my car, put the AC on full blast, keep the XPS near it to try to cool it down.
Air cooling down.
So yeah, the struggle was absolutely real. So yeah, but I've got like a little mobile AC units, which I bring in to my office room now. So then that way the cooling situation is much better. But then again, the heat wave only lasts so long, so generally it is pretty cold here.
Yes, well, so for me, I've always, like, the times that we've seen each other when I was in the UK is usually around May. So for us, it's starting to warm up here in Southern California, so we get heat a lot. Well, it's not super bad in the sense of humidity and heat. We get dry heat, so even though we hit 40, maybe 42, 44, it sounds high, but in reality, it's dry heat, so you don't get the humidity. But then when I go to the UK, like around the same time when we're hitting close to 30, almost 40, and you guys are having like nice cold weather, so I always love it. But the one thing that I definitely appreciate is the food, the culture, the experience, and there's always some kebabs. There's always places to kebab. You could just literally go walk around every single corner.
You're never too many meters away from a kebab in the UK. That's something I do appreciate as well, like the selection of halal food and different cuisines that we have here. We have like Chinese restaurants. There's a really nice halal Chinese restaurant which I absolutely love here, and it just has such nice food. And then we have obviously Lebanese, Turkish, Indian, South Asian, all sorts. And that's, I mean, one of the things that I really miss when I do go travel, as we go for our hunts, whenever we meet in all these different places, where can we find a halal place, right? The one thing that I love about here, and one of the reasons why I don't move, especially in the city I'm in, Leicester, there is halal food everywhere. Like, you could go anywhere and I guarantee you'll find really good halal food.
There's a spot in London, I forgot the name of the city, but there was a street that literally was like a halal restaurant. Every other store was halal, and it was like in every other street, every other store was a kebab store. So I forget the name of it, but there is a little area that I forgot.
There is I'm trying to recall it right now. It's just completely slipped me as well. It'll come back to me. To me.
If anybody in the comments knows about it, one of the best places called the Best Doner Kebab. There's actually the name of the restaurant is called the Best Doner Kebab restaurant. So
there's quite a few of those, though. That's the problem. There's like the best shawarma, the best kebab, the best this, and it's just like okay. There's a lot of these that are claiming to be the best.
Well, to me it tasted great. It was nice. It was a time we were covering DroidCon a few years back with XDA, but. With that being said, first and foremost, I've been following your coverage. A lot of cool things coming out from you, and one of the things, obviously, that we want to talk about today is the Xperia One Mark II, also known Xperia One II. I am so jealous right now. My time with it ended some weeks ago. I still have the Xperia One, then the Xperia 5. And right before we started the show, Saf was asking me, it's like, would you consider yourself a fan of the Xperia line? I started with it last year. My appreciation of what Sony's bringing to the table this year I was surprised with what the Mark II was doing, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But just kind of a heads up a little bit, if you guys haven't checked it out, Saf's going to be putting out his video coverage on the, I think is it the review, or what's coming up from you in the near future?
It's going to be a camera review, yeah. So we'll be touching on a few points here as well, which is absolutely fine because there'll be a crossover, of course. But it's going to be a camera review of the Xperia One Mark II, because that's really my sort of area and something that a lot of people have been asking for, a SuperSaf style camera comparison or review. So yeah, hopefully in the next couple of days when I get around to putting it all together and
putting them in, and then will there be running? Will there be a running bit in the video as we usually get?
Of course.
I always love those.
Test.
Yeah. No. It's always like the last one I think you did was at that right around, was it the lakefront where you were running along shore and you saw the Tesla passing by. So it's always appreciative. I'm a big fan of your style of videos, and of course, looking forward to the Xperia One Mark II and to see your views and your take on the phone. Today we're going to talk a little bit more about impressions, not necessarily giving too much away, unless you'd like to put any kind of teasers in there. I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah.
And then, of course, if you guys have any questions in the comments, please let me know, and we'll try to see if we can get to some of those. One of the other things we're also going to try to touch on a little bit is obviously iOS 14. That was also the other big thing that came out this week. A lot of people have tried it. There's a lot of inspirations, I would say, from Android. I'll say that. I'm not going to say they copied. It's inspiration. Personally, I use both. I use iOS and I use Android, but I'm mainly an Android user. Of
course.
So if you guys haven't noticed, you just have to look at Saf's glasses and you can kind of see that his table is full. I chose different glasses. I don't want to show you the mess that I have at my table. So you've had a couple of weeks with the Xperia One Mark II. Had you used an Xperia device before? Or is this the first Sony?
Oh, I've used multiple Xperia devices before. I had the Xperia One, the original one, not the Mark II. The Xperia XZ series as well. I've used quite a few. My father actually still uses the one of the Xperia XZ compact devices because
we had that
as a more compact phone, something because he usually has it in his front pocket, and I was like, look, Dad, which phone do you want? And he just wanted something compact which you could take around because he's got another Huawei phone as well. It's so funny because there was a point where he was just like, no, I don't want to use a smartphone, and now he's there with two phones, and he's got like a group of friends on one phone and a group of friends on the other. I'm like, you're a drug dealer secretly. Let me know.
He's gonna take the Captain Two Phone title from Michael Fisher at this point.
Yeah, I guess so. But yeah, he's been he's been using the Xperia for some time. So I've pretty much used, I'd say, pretty much most of the Xperia phones. And always there's a lot that I like about them, but there's always a lot missing, in my opinion, based on all the smartphones that I use. Of course, as we were saying, we both use iOS and Android devices, and we're fortunate enough to use and compare devices to what's out there as well. And that's something that so that's the kind of point of view that I'm coming from as well. So hopefully it gives me more of a balanced opinion. But unfortunately, a lot of people do take my criticisms of a device as I've been accused of being paid by Apple and Samsung to put Sony
at the same time. Yeah. I've seen those comments. I love those.
Really?
Both paid in the same video. How does that work?
It's like they're so adamant to put the camera down. They're like, Saf, here's a bunch of money. It's like, wow, really? People think that? It's crazy.
No, and that's one thing you have to understand is you are in a position where you're able to test out different devices and see all the different options. In general, I think on the average consumer, the person that usually goes and shops, they're generally looking at maybe one or two, maybe three selections at most, and even then, they don't have a way of testing it. And that's what we're trying to bring for you guys in our reviews. It's our perspective from using other devices. It's also our perspective from years of experience with the brand or with the product itself. So for me, I started with so in the US, Sony hasn't been, it's been available, but it hasn't been as available in Europe. And I think even today, the Xperia One Mark II is actually launching later in the year. So we're getting it on July 24th, where I think in the UK and most of Europe, you guys are already starting to receive devices. A buddy of mine picked it up from, I want to say 3, but I'm not sure which carrier he picked it up on, but he got it for like $7.99. Like, wow, you guys have subsidized pricing on it, which is one of my concerns. But it is one of the things, so for me, I still have the Xperia One, and I love the display. It's a great 4K display. It's a unique experience that you can't really get everything. You can't get that from any other device. But let's touch base a little bit on the last couple of weeks. What are your? I would say if you had to kind of like maybe give us a few words as far as what are your thoughts on it? Is it an improvement? Is it what you were expecting out of it when you from all the other things that you heard obviously before you got your unit? Because I think we all got I think Sony is very timely. I would say very timely in the amount of time everybody has access to that phone. Mine was very short at the beginning, and then it kind of started doing circling. So, what are your thoughts? What do you think?
Well, firstly, I was quite jealous because you got the device. You and another few select reviewers got it early, and and again, my comments were going crazy on YouTube saying, "Saf, you're being paid by these other manufacturers not to cover the Sony," and there was a lot of comments of these, and I'm like,
"Oh wow,
how can I? There's nowhere it's available. I can't buy it." I've not been sent it because the UK PR samples are in a different timeline to the US PR samples. Like, what do you want me to do, right? And this is the thing. So that was one of the issues that I was having, because I was really trying to get a hold of it. Because from a personal point of view, I'm a tech enthusiast, and especially when it comes to smartphone cameras. And I was just like, look, I really want to test this out because, as you were saying, you are a Sony Alpha user. I myself, Sony A7 III. I love
Same
that
here.
camera. It's my go-to.
Love it. Exactly.
Photos, videos, absolutely love it. So there we go. Like, and not only myself, but like close friends. So the Unlocker, David Kogan, him, and Enabong from Board at Work. They were really the two who kind of persuaded me to get the Sony A7 III, which I've had for about a couple of years now. I also use the Sony ZV-1 right now, but the RX100 series I've been using for. So I'm a very avid Sony user. So for me, it's not only a thing of, okay, this is the demand, I need to cover it, but it's more of a personal thing. I really want to test it out myself for my personal, enthusiasm, that I really, really want to see what this camera is like and what this can offer. So that's been one of the things which I was quite jealous about. But from then, having used the phone, to kind of summarize it initially, I would my title of my unboxing video was the Sony Xperia Mark II. It's different. And that's something that, really, this is a very different smartphone, different flagship compared to everything else out there. And I do like that from Sony, that, they're going against what everybody else is doing, and they're kind of like, okay, we're going to do something that's quite unique. Having said that, this also makes it a very niche, or niche, as you Americans like to say, a very, very niche device.
Very niche.
So
that's a Michael Fisher. That's a quote right there. Michael Fisher's going to get a check for that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because we were having a conversation and he said niche, and I was like, Fisher, you said niche and not niche. I'm very happy that you did, because usually when I'm speaking to Marquez or whoever else, Enabong,
it's a very niche market. Yeah.
It's
a niche market. Yeah.
So that's what I would say. It's very different, but because of that, it also makes it very, and I mean like very, very niche. Like, there's only a small handful of people I could recommend this phone to, as opposed to many other smartphones out there. And the selection is very wide and far right now.
Yes, no. And I think in a certain way, the way I saw the Xperia Mark II, or the Xperia, so we'll refer to them as a Mark I and Mark II, because otherwise the title, it's going to be long. Will be like the whole video of like Xperia 1 Mark.
Somebody can do a tally counter the amount of times we say Xperia.
Yeah. And then for every time, hopefully Sony can not pay us for it. No, it is not paid. I'm just kidding. It is not a paid video. This is purely. I was super excited when I saw Saf getting the phone. The way that you're right. The organization of this launch is a little bit off. The reason behind that, I got access to the phone 2 months before the phone was launching. So it's an early access, which is great from my end. I love the fact that I was able to get it. My time was very limited, but then again, in the US, we won't get access to the phone and today is what, the 27th? Still almost a whole month from now. So those are the things that I felt like with the launch in the UK, you have access to the phone while people can actually pick it up if they decide to do that. So I felt like it's more closely tied into it. What I saw with the 2 over the 1, or the Mark II over the Mark I, was the fact that they kind of went with, they heard the concerns from the Mark I. So it's really more of a generational improvement to me over what we saw last year. And the fact that they brought back a headphone jack with a built-in DAC, that kind of excited me there. Is it perfect? By no means. I mean, I feel like the Xperia 1 Mark II it excels in certain parts, and it has concerns, and I do talk about those. Obviously, the front-facing camera for me is just, I felt like it's there. It's okay to take a selfie here and there, but it's not conducive to vlogging. And I feel like to get the best experience out of the phone, you have to use the Camera Pro and the Cinema Pro. Realistically, those are the 2 powerhouses. But it's meant to be more it was meant for me to use it more as me behind the camera. So that was one of the things. But it overall, like I said, it's a generational improvement, and I felt like they did some good stuff. The headphone jack, the wireless charging was definitely good. Better focusing on gaming. I actually enjoyed gaming on that one pretty well. The wider form factor made it better, and of course, those are different things that we covered in the videos. But yeah, no, like I said, there's always going to be the plus and minus of any kind of device, and
of course, with every device, yeah.
And you know, in the US, the price point is a little bit high. We don't have subsidies. You guys, I'm jealous that you guys can get it for $7.99. I'm like, wow.
So again, I'm going to have to look up on that because I'm not sure what that kind of subsidy actually involves, and if there's anything tied to that. So I'd have to look into that. But like from what I've been told, it's £1,100. So that's very equivalent to the US pricing. So I'm not aware of this specific subsidy that's out at the moment, but I think you mentioned that there's a lot that's good about it, and there is definitely improvements. You know, one of the things that I was you know, complaining about a lot with the Xperia One, and I got a lot of hate for, was the dynamic range. So you know, you mentioned the Cinema Pro and the Photo Pro app, and this is something that I will be going into a little bit more detail in my video about. But when it comes to a smartphone, the sensor sizes and the hardware that we're dealing with is so small that you know, I love having those pro apps, but I usually use Filmic Pro on my iPhone, for example, which does give me a lot of those pro settings, right?
Yes.
So I can control you know, things like the focus, things like the shutter speed and things. So I can really, you know, play around with those and get some, because there's certain situations, and I think one of the perfect examples is a silhouette. If you want to try to get a silhouette on a regular smartphone, it's just going to get so much detail in the shadows, you're just not going to get that same silhouette effect. And this is something that I love using a pro mode for, you know, adjusting white balance completely to the way you like it. And this is something that I really like that Sony has included in the Photo and the Cinema Pro app. Now, my problem with that is that that's all well and good, and it's absolutely great having that. Smartphone photography and videography has developed so much over the past few years, and we've heard of terms like multi-image frame processing, computational photography, and Google is the poster, you know, phone pixels for that, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Because the software is as important as the hardware, and we already know that pretty much every smartphone, every major flagship smartphone out there uses Sony sensors. We always see Sony IMX 586, whatever.
Sony's in the conversation, even if they're not even if we're not talking about Xperia. You're right.
And they make really great hardware. Now, when it comes to smartphone photography, one of my biggest complaint with the Xperia One was, okay, the pro mode is great, but if you try taking a pro shot of a situation where there's lots of deep shadows and very you know, very bright highlights, then the pro mode, I'm sorry, but it's just not useful, because unless you're going for a silhouette, of course, but what computational photography and that multi-image frame processing does, when you take one shot, it's actually taking multiple exposures, and it's combining those to give you a really good dynamic range. And that's something that I really appreciate on something like the Pixel, something like the iPhone. And this is something that I really found was a big problem with the Xperia One. The good thing is that Sony have now improved the defaults app on the Xperia One Mark II. So you actually do get very good dynamic range in a lot of situations. And when you do compare the shots, which you'll see in my video, which I've compared, because I went out, I took some pro shots of those tricky situations, and then I took some shots in the default camera. And then when you compare the two, I mean, everybody would say that the camera out of the regular mode was much better, because you had details in the highlights and the shadows, right? Highlights which were completely lost in the Pro app. And this is the thing. So and with video, so I'm using the Cinema Pro app. Now, if I've got a control situation where I'm, you know, just getting focus right, getting the exposure right, that's fine. But if you're vlogging, for example, and you're walking around, or you're running, like you said, as soon as you go from one side to another, even if you do as much of a 90-degree turn, it's completely different. So the exposure that you set for at this angle here is completely different to this angle here. And again, that's something that I found that was a real struggle. So the pro apps are great. Don't get me wrong, and I love them. And as I said, I personally use Filmic Pro and other apps. And on Samsung devices, you do have the Pro modes, which I really enjoy using, and on the Huawei devices. But for me, those are for specific situations. Now,
Absolutely.
on the software side of things, I know I'm going on for quite a bit.
No, it's okay.
This is something that I was very, like my feedback was very much on the Xperia One. Now, that feedback, some of it has been taken on board, and you do get some really good shots out of the regular app, especially on the ultra wide. I really enjoyed using the ultra wide camera. But as soon as you put it up against an iPhone or a Pixel or something like that, then for me, more often than not, I would always prefer the other one, because the processing there is just much better. And then when you get to areas like night mode, right, it's just like, okay, now pretty much every flagship smartphone camera right now has a really good night mode.
Exactly.
Where is that? So unless I had a tripod, I'm not going to be able to match low light photography on the Xperia One Mark II to an iPhone 11 Pro Max or a Google Pixel, for instance. And that's something that I found very frustrating. And, you mentioned the front facing camera, and, I've seen smartphones half the price of this, which have a much better front-facing camera. And I know there's going to be some people saying, "Oh, selfies are for losers." There's others saying, "Why don't you just use the rear-facing camera?" But that defeats the object.
Yeah.
If you're charging £1,200 for a smartphone, I'm sorry, but there is absolutely no excuse to have a bad front-facing camera. Have you tried using the portrait mode from the front-facing camera?
I have actually I took it for 2 pictures, and then I stopped using the front-facing camera. I switched over to the back sensor.
There we go.
I think Juan Carlos and I had a conversation about this, and I feel like it's almost like the Alpha team, the Sony Alpha team came and said, "Okay, let's go ahead and bring in some of those really cool features from the Sony Alpha camera into the the Xperia One Mark II." And then they said, "What about the front-facing camera?" And the Alpha team's like, "What front-facing camera? We don't have front-facing cameras on our Alpha cameras. We don't do that." So I feel like it's a missed opportunity that for Sony to add some better optics or maybe better processing, because again, you can only use it with the default camera, and I feel like it's not conducive for vlogging. So for me, I ended up basically enjoying the fact that it's a very reflective back, that I can actually center my shot and I can kind of see what I'm using with it. So yeah, I would have appreciated more if they did a little bit more better improvements on the front-facing camera, being that in 2020, we once in a while we'll take a selfie. I can appreciate that, but yeah, no, for $1,200, I felt like that would have been something they should have focused on. And I did voice that back. I did, in my feedback, that I did kind of ever so slightly, give back to some of the Sony people that I've talked to. The camera sensor on the front, unfortunately is not conducive. I would never consider the Mark II as a vlogging or as a vlogger type of a tool. I feel like it's really meant, like you said, for the niche, for the producer, for the content creator. The projecting that you're talking about with the exposure on Cinema Pro, absolutely, yes. No, I learned that very quickly with the Cinema Pro on the first version. It's something that you have to understand. You have to kind of you change the way you use it. You have to use it like an SLR, but also in the sense of an SLR that doesn't have auto mode, right? Everything is controlled manually, so you shoot in clips and then you stitch later. You can't do a pan shot with it unless the entire pan shot is indoors and controlled lighting, like you said. So. Which makes the story of the Sony Xperia a little bit harder to kind of put together. But I'm looking forward to seeing some of the work that you've done. And I think we saw Michael Fisher's video, which so nicely was alluding to your video, which was very nice. I actually, that's a very nice little coast to coast collaboration. New York to Leicester, UK.
Yeah, no, I mean, we had such a good conversation as well, and Fisher, obviously love Fisher. I was just speaking to Tom, the tech chap, earlier on. We were playing Call of Duty together, and he was like, "Oh, how did it go?" And I go, "You know what? More than anything else, it was just nice to have a chat with Fisher and kind of talk face to face, sort of thing. It was just really nice to do that, and in the same way that we're speaking right now as well.
Yeah.
And obviously Fisher, I really respect his opinion, and he's somebody that's very much looked up to in the tech community. So I just thought, let me get him over as well, because we can talk like we're talking as well right now and discussing a few of these things, because the word niche is going to be used quite a bit in here, because one of the things Fisher's mentioned, and I think he hit the nail on the head though, is that okay, having all of those alpha features in this smartphone is great, right? And I love having those features on here. But for that niche of people who really want those alpha, you know, the alpha experience on a smartphone, they already have a Sony Pro alpha camera. So then once again limits the use, because as I said, for me, smartphone photography and videography is very different, which is why I have the two. I know there's some people who just, you know, shoot entirely on a pro camera, and there's people who shoot entirely on smartphone. But for me, especially in the day and age of, you know, the likes of Instagram stories, you know, TikTok, for those who use it, you know, I know there's a lot of people who don't, but you know, in the day and age of
SuperSaf's TikTok, he's active as well. So
but it's just that for me, it's just like, I love having those pro features. Don't get me wrong, because there's loads of situations where I'm like, and which is why I've always had, you know, a pro app on my phone to be able to get those great shots. I remember I took a picture of a sunset once, and people were like, "How did you get a blue sunset? It looked like it was on a different planet," because I was playing around with the white balance settings, because I was just like, this would be really cool to mess around with. And I actually used that as an Eid Mubarak picture. It's like almost looked like it was on a different planet. It was really cool. But again, I cannot do that on the auto camera app. However, on the flip side, why can't Sony have an amazing regular app which does night mode, which does everything that we're used to seeing phones that are half the price of this doing very, very well? Why can't they do that and then also have the you know, the alpha experience on here? And that's something that really, I mean, like, I tried taking some portraits with this, and honestly speaking, the portrait shots that came out of this from the rear-facing camera look to me like $200-300 phone portrait shots, because dynamic range out the window. You can just say goodbye to dynamic range because everything is blown out. I see a circle around my head with bits in and out of focus, and I'm like, this is a $1,200 phone. I'm sorry, but there is no excuse to have that level of, and you know, people will be like, yes, portrait shots. I don't take portrait shots, but regardless, there are people who do take portrait shots. And you know, some of the shots that I posted on social, Instagram, the likes, have been taken on the iPhone, the Pixel, some of the Samsung phones that I've used, the Huawei phones. People don't even know if they've been taken on a smartphone or not, because especially with time of flight sensors, edge detection has become so far, and you get some really good looking portrait shots. And you know, when I'm out at an event, for example, right, last time me, Enabong, MJ, Michael, Josh, Chai, we were out in the desert, in Vegas, so in the Nevada desert, and it was amazing. And you know, we mostly just had our smartphone cameras with us, and we got some great looking shots, like absolutely stunning shots, just using our smartphones. And then that for me was just like, you know, this is why I absolutely love smartphone photography, because you can be anywhere. You might not have the right situation, you know, like in terms of being able to carry all your kit around, but you can still get amazing shots because smartphone cameras have come this far. And, you know, you've got the computational photography, which is going to blur out the background and give you a really good looking shot. Now, as I said, like, you know, having tested this for those areas, it was very disappointing for me that that level of software processing is still not there. So yes, there's been an improvement, but there is a long way to go, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's definitely something to look forward to. I guess I would say maybe some of those things that they could definitely, hopefully work for. In the US, at least on the models that we had, we did not have final software because it wasn't actually officially released yet as a device. So I'm not sure if maybe there's something, because I think also, if I'm not mistaken, I think Michael also did comment on the fact that the software we were running wasn't final on the versions that we got.
Okay.
There is hopefully in the future possibilities, you know, for Sony to upgrade. I hope so. One of the things I definitely appreciated about the alpha features that they brought in is the autofocus and the face detection. That level of tracking
on a smartphone, like,
shocked that it worked, but I was shocked that it worked so good, you know. And I tested it out on I have cats, you know, my son and my you know, we have cats here, and it works on pets. And I was trying to do, you know, my son running, just having him do his own little jumps, kept track of his face, everything, every single shot in those 20 frames per second that it was shooting. Every time I was taking images was an image of its own. I mean, it may not have been the right pose, but it was a good image in focus. But you needed to be you needed to be using the, you know, the camera pro, and you needed to be in, you know, in certain environments. So I felt like that level that type of improvements are appreciated, and I feel like hopefully that software could fix some of those, because like you said, computational photography, those things could be upgraded, as those are most post-processing, not hardware dependent. They have improved the sensors from what we had last year. They decided to stick with the 12 megapixel, again, very much against what most people were doing. And they decided to go with bigger sensors, giving us that focal, the trinity of lenses, the 16, 24, and 70. For me, like I said, it's definitely a camera or a device that has a specific customer in mind, and I feel like that's how Sony is. I think Sony is not trying to brushstroke every kind of we cater to everything, but they in a certain way they listen to their consumers from Gen 1, from Mark 1 over to the Mark 2, and we could definitely appreciate having I feel like those things in there. And
oh yeah, for sure.
We need more time.
Oh yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people might be thinking that I'm coming across quite negative, but I'm mentioning the concerns that I have with it. But there is a lot to like about this. The color science, very, very good. One of the things that a lot of people don't like, and I'm sure, like especially pro photographers, is the over-processed colors. So like very vibrant, very saturated colors. One thing that I really liked about Sony shooting it was the colors were very natural, and they were also consistent between the cameras, and that's something that is very, very good. Like that color processing, because we see the very oversaturated look, which some people do prefer, don't get me wrong, but it's nice having something that's a bit more true to life, a bit more natural. And that's something that I really liked about the Sony cameras, that consistency between the different lenses. The fact that they stuck with 12 megapixels, because one of the things that really annoys me with the current smartphone trend is megapixel numbers. So you see the 48 megapixels, the 108 megapixels, but you are still shooting at 12 megapixels. So what is the point?
Or 16? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the images are not.
What is the point? Yeah, so they're using pixel binning, and the only way you're going to get good shots with these so-called higher megapixel cameras is if you shoot at 12 megapixels or around 16, so around there. So if it's a 48 megapixel camera, it's going to be divided by 4. It's going to be a 12 megapixel shot. And if you do want to shoot at 48 megapixels, it's not easy. You need to go into the Pro app. You need to switch on 48 megapixels, etc., etc. You need to switch on the high-res mode. Exactly. Now, you look at the iPhone, 12 megapixels, triple at the back, 12 megapixels at the front. And that's something that I appreciate. Sony, again, I appreciate that they just went 12, 12, 12. Why bother, just trying to inflate the numbers? I don't think it works in terms of the marketing side of things. Yes, when we initially saw about the 108 megapixel sensor, just having that on a smartphone was quite impressive. But I was more interested in the sensor size. Okay, what is the sensor size? How is that going to benefit my photography in terms of low light photography, in particular, in terms of the detail and clarity that I'm going to be able to get out the cameras? But at the same time, 99.9% of the shots that people are going to be taking on these so-called high megapixel cameras will be at around 12 to maybe 16 at a push. Yep. But generally, they're going to be at around 12 megapixels. And that's something, again, that I appreciate from Sony. The autofocus is, best in class. Like the fact that you can get a burst shot and, as you were saying, have focus every time. Very, very impressive. And Crazy. Don't let me down. I don't want to downplay any of these amazing features by what I've said earlier on in terms of the lack of good
the
quality
dynamic.
image processing. But to me, if I'm paying $1,200 or £1,100 for a smartphone, it's great having those features. But why have these other features not been looked at, such as the front-facing camera? I mean, let's take the iPhone SE, for example, which is a $400 smartphone. Hands down, that has a better front-facing camera than the Xperia. Hands down. Nobody can argue. Nobody can argue with me there, because you just have to put the results side by side. You're getting much better
I won't
images.
argue with you either.
Yeah, and this is the thing. So it's just like, and then it kind of just like, to me, it's just like when you are charging. I mean, if this came in, as you were saying, at around the £800 mark, which with these subsidies, then you can be a bit more okay. And I think something that Fisher mentioned in his video as well is that when you're at that price point, then you are going to get that criticism as well, because at that price point you expect. I mean, I was pretty harsh on the Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra in my review as well, and I got a lot of feedback on that as well, because people are like, you're being a bit harsh. But I'm like, sorry, but it's a £1,400
feedback.
Yeah, yes. £1,400 phone, right? It's a $1,400 phone. It's a very expensive phone, and when you are paying that price, things like autofocus, the issues that we had initially, which have improved by the way, these are things that shouldn't be a concern when you're paying that amount. And my job as a tech reviewer is to talk about these things, because then manufacturers can see that, people can see that, be vocal about it, and then that's how we get change. That's how the Sony Xperia 2 or the Sony Xperia 1 Mark III, whatever they call it, is going to have much better smartphone cameras, and that's something that I really try to emphasize in my videos.
Yes, no, and I feel like this is definitely a step in the right direction. So my hope essentially is that if we do end, because we're still missing RAW format. I think that was one of the other things that we talked about. We were supposed to have that already. It's not in the camera yet, but it is one of the features that are going to be coming out. S-Log is going to be also another good thing that my hope essentially, those will help. Again, I feel like this is created for content creators. It's not really, it's intended with the creative mind in set that has the ability of setting time to use Cinema Pro and use and think of your photography as a project, not necessarily as I just want to shoot a 4K 60 frames per second, video of my son running around the backyard kind of thing. I feel like it's.
So, I want to ask you a question on that then.
Yeah.
Then, okay, so you've got a Sony A7 III, so you're in that niche that is used to the Alpha series, and you've got the Xperia 1 Mark II. Why would you choose to use the Xperia 1 Mark II for these videos when you could just use your A7 III and it's going to be much, much better? Because to me, that's the niche. As far as I can see, the niche is current Alpha users. So it's just like, why would you want to do that when you already have something? And there might be very specific situations, but as soon as you put this on a tripod, as soon as you want to put this on a tripod, you could just bring your A7 III. That's my point.
Yes, no. So for this situation that you and I are in, obviously it's a different situation. We have we have access to the A7 III, and we're looking at a smartphone that has, the way I put it together is, I looked at it as it's an alpha camera experience in a smartphone for the user that does not have an alpha camera. For me, if I'm going out, let's say, with Las Vegas, as you were talking about with CES this year, my approach to Vegas this year was very minimalistic. I brought my A7 III, but I ended up using my RX-7 100 more often, another Sony camera, more often for those, vlog style, on the show floor, run a gun kind of thing, just kind of putting things together. I loved using the A7 III whenever I had the ability of setting it up on a tripod, and using it basically as my A camera. Why would I use why would I take the Mark II over, let's say, the A7 III? I probably would never choose the Mark II over the A7 III. If I have both in hand, always go with the best camera with the best lens that you have. That's always there's no question about that. What I like about the Mark II is that when I'm out and about and I don't have my A7 III, I have some control over the composition. I'm outside, we're at the beach, we're sitting with the family, I'm able to sit down and compose my shot. I felt like the camera experience with the Camera Pro was so much better than what we had last year with the default camera application, just access, with the little bit of a pro mode, that it benefited me. But it's more of you have to use it to appreciate it. And in the US, we don't have access to that. So it was a situation where you had to buy the Xperia 1 to try it. So to answer the question, would I ever pick one over the other if I have access to both? No, I would always go for the A7 III. Why would I buy a $1,200 version of the Xperia 1 Mark II? To me, it would be more to get a kind of like a smaller version of the RX-7 100. That's the best way to describe it. It's the audio input that you're able to use with the camera application. The ability of setting up your 4K 60 was the other upgrade that we saw that we didn't have last year. It's just those little things that reminded me so much of the A7 III when I'm using a smartphone. You know what I mean? It's kind of like the feel of the McLaren, but in a Mustang kind of a thing. It's a fast car, and speed is a big thing with the A7 III, with the Mark II. But I feel like it gave me that nostalgia feeling. If it fed what I was missing from the Mark I. I think that's the best way to describe it.
Interesting. That's really good to hear, because as I said, it seems like there's a very small niche, and I think some of the points we touched on really do put an emphasis on that. And that's the thing for me, like, you know, a lot of the pro features that you mentioned, as I said, you know, if you've ever tried Filmic Pro, very good app.
Very, on the iPhone I've used. I haven't used it on on Android.
Yeah, it's $15. So you do have to buy it. It's not something that comes by default. And you know, for me, that mindset is like, you know, like if I even look at my pro photographer friend, so, you know, take Peter McKinnon, for example. We were in Canada, and he has his main camera, but he loves his iPhone, and he loves the shots that he gets with his iPhone as well, right? But it's two separate things for him, because you have your smartphone for your smartphone photography and videography, and, you know, things like Instagram stories, things like, you know, run and gun, things that you just want to quickly capture something just to kind of share the moment where you don't have time to set everything up. But then this is the thing for me, like personally, the way I've been shooting for the past, you know, 5-10 years, using pro apps on other smartphones as well. I really like some of the cinematic videos that I used to do. Like, for instance, one on the Galaxy S7. I use the Pro Video app, and I'm so glad that Samsung has now brought the Pro Video mode into their default camera app. So they had taken that out. I'm sure you're aware of that. But initially, you know, we used to have that, and a lot of people were complaining about it. And now that it's back, I absolutely love that I can pull focus, and I have, focus peaking and things like that built in to the smartphone camera, and I use it all the time. And, you know, but that's only, I would say, maybe 5-10% of the time. But for the majority of the time, you know, and the one thing I want to talk about is, obviously, we've been talking a lot about the cameras.
I know. I feel like it's just the camera, right?
But I mean, obviously, that's something that I'm very passionate about, and something that I will be talking about in my camera review video as well. But you know, another thing, like, you know, talking about this display. The display. I mean, the form factor of this, I really like it because it's the same. It's roughly the same height as, you know, say something like. So I've got the Samsung Galaxy Note here, for instance, and it's roughly the same height, right? Actually smaller. But it's much thinner, so it makes it much more accessible. So I quite like, and generally speaking, when we're on social media and things, we're looking at very long timelines, and that's something that, again, you don't necessarily need that width. You do need that height, and that's
the height, exactly.
Yeah, and that's something that I think is really good. I don't mind those top and bottom bezels. I would happily trade top and the bezel-less display experience for two front-firing speakers that we have on here. So, you know, that's something really good. You mentioned the 3.5mm jack, and I'm glad that they listened to that feedback, because the niche that's going to be buying this smartphone, a 3.5mm jack, is very important to them. So I'm glad that they brought that back in here as well. And, you know, the display is beautiful. That 4K experience, that 21:9 experience when you are watching movies and things like that, is very, very good. Now, having said that, I'm gonna talk on the other side as well.
Yeah.
Instagram stories. Watching Instagram stories on the Xperia One Mark II, I've seen a lot of cropping, because
TikTok as well. TikTok does the exact same thing. Yeah, it's not optimized to work with the 21:9. I mean, we were getting closer. More smartphones are starting to get thinner. I mean, you know, OnePlus does the same thing. I mean, they're getting there. They're not at the 21:9. Yeah. But I feel like, I like watching TikTok, and, you know, like some people will comments on the right hand side when they duet, and you get like half, like there's that whole bar.
So this is the thing. So, like, you know, again, like with those things that I'm somebody who uses Instagram stories on a daily basis, and it's an area where I can really engage with my audience, you know, on a more personal level. And that's something that I did find a bit of a struggle on. Like the Galaxy Fold, absolutely love that device, right? Now, it's not perfect, don't get me wrong, but, you know, the kid in me, that tech enthusiast, when I saw a phone that we can fold in half, like, that was, to me, like, I remember when I did the unboxing video, it was super late, but I still did an unboxing video, and people were like, you know, if you want to see true love, see Saf opening. Somebody commented, I want somebody to look at me the way Saf looks at the Galaxy Fold, and it was just that genuine excitement of seeing technology like fold open like this. But then on a day-to-day use, like, you know, things like Instagram stories, everything would be cropped. Like the top and bottom would be cropped because of that form factor.
The Fold has so the Fold suffered from a different form factor issue. Yes, but
different form factor. So that's something that I also experienced here on the Xperia One Mark II. And, you know, And we were talking about how Sony really kind of went against what everybody else is doing. So we've got a 4K display on here, and I just watched Tom, the Tech Chap's review video on here, and as much as I like the 4K display and I think it's sharp, I would happily, personally, again, this might just be me personally, I would happily trade that for a proper high refresh rate. Now, let me just emphasize that I'm not somebody who's crazy about high refresh rate screens. I really like them. Do I think it's necessary? No. Like, I will happily use a smartphone, as I have on here, without a high refresh rate screen. It's nice to have. It's not necessary, right? However, if you ask me the question, 4K on a smartphone or a high refresh rate, I'd say high refresh rate, because 4K at this level of screen, I don't think makes as much of an impact. And I know there's the motion blur reduction.
It tries to give you something. Yeah, it's not
but it's not a true. It's not.
Yeah, it's not a true 90. It's a little bit better than if you put the 1 and 2 next to each other. You will notice some improvements in there. Yeah.
Yeah. But if I was to ask you the question, 4K on a display smartphone or a high refresh rate screen, what would you choose?
So my answer generally will be, there's the 2 devices that I carry, so it depends on which one I'm using. If I had to pick one over the other, mostly because I've had access to phones with high refresh rates, like 120, 144. I mean, I've been playing games on a 144 with 1080p. It's ridiculously fast. Yeah. It depends on the experience. I like to have phones that are dedicated for gaming, and I have them. If I had to pick one or the other, like if I'm in a store right now and I needed a high refresh rate, I think, like the OnePlus 8 is definitely, or the 8 Pro, not the 8 specifically. Or, like the Find X2 Pro. Those are definitely one of the higher quality displays that I can see on the market right now. Big displays, high refresh rate, and QHD. If I had to pick between the two, I probably would go with more of the high refresh because of the gaming aspect that I like to have. Because now we're seeing more and more games support like 90 frames per second from Fortnite that's running on mobile now. We have quite a few games that run on 120, if not 144. It's for that specific, just for the display size technology itself, I would probably pick one that has a high refresh rate.
Yeah.
Because of that, because I tend to game. That's something that I do. If you're looking at it as a user and you're looking more of the general usability, because we saw LG also that kind of came in with a 60 frames per second or 60 hertz, but they consistently kept that refresh rate across the entire ecosystem. So they did more of a with Android, even though 60 is the standard, not everything runs at 60. We have things that will drop down to 30, go up to 60, depending on the game that you're using or the application. But LG kind of smoothed it out. Sony pushed the limit of the 865. Right? The 865 can only perform at best at 4K 60 frames per second. It can't go any higher. And I think that's where the motion blur comes in. But it really depends on the use case. For me, I probably go for the display with a higher refresh rate. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, so based on that point, like, okay, take the Samsung Galaxy S20 series, for instance, right?
Okay.
120 hertz, but only at 1080p. I personally used it fully at 1080p at 120 hertz. And I had no problems with it. I mean, it's still a beautiful display. It's still sharp. It's not at the level of sharpness, don't get me wrong, but I still absolutely had no problems using that display. And everybody that I've spoken to was like absolutely fine. So here's what I would say, like, okay, now take the Sony Xperia World Mark II in the same 21:9 aspect ratio. Leave it at Quad HD with 120 hertz, okay? Like we've got on the likes of that, or in its current state. What would you pick?
I probably would go with give me the QHD with the higher refresh rate and to give me that form factor. It's kind of that good combination.
Yeah. So this is the thing. So like, I understand that Sony have gone down this route because they're making it, they're different, right? But I think the majority of people, if you ask them, I'm pretty sure if you asked anybody in our circle anyway, that having experienced both, and I know not everybody's experienced, not everybody's as privileged and as fortunate as us, alhamdulillah, right?
Alhamdulillah,
but like if you ask somebody who's used both and you ask them that, okay, would you have rather, on this phone? Because I do see as I said, in terms of the form factor when you're scrolling through, it's something that I really do appreciate, and it's something that, I think I see why Sony have done this. But at the same time, you do get the downsides of it as well. Like if you're watching a 16:9 video, which this one is at as well, you're going to get those.
I was going to say,
yeah.
Big bars.
So I'm happy that they, it's fine that they went for that 21:9. But I think pretty much if you ask anybody who's used both high refresh rate screens and higher resolution screens, I think at least 9 out of 10 people would have preferred if the Xperia 1 Mark II had a higher refresh rate with a lower resolution rather than going for this 4K angle.
Yeah, no, and so speaking of which I'd love to touch on something. Did you get a chance to play with the Xperia 5 last year?
No, I did not.
The baby brother.
No, I did
so
not.
The Xperia 5 brings the Xperia 1, so last year's version at least, the Xperia 1 Mark, the Xperia 1, getting confused with the numbers. It brought basically that experience to a 1080p panel. So my hope is that if Sony is watching it, obviously if they're listening to taking any kind of recommendation, I would say is use the opportunity to what you have there, where it is going to be a 1080p resolution. You're not going to be trying to push 4K to give that extra frame rate, to go to 90, to go to 120 on the Xperia 5, because I feel like that would also be something that they can work with. It's right around the corner. The Xperia 1 was kind of a later release, but I
would be doubtful. I think this will probably be next year now, because if they do an Xperia 5 Mark II, for instance, right?
Yeah.
If that has a high refresh rate screen than this, then I don't think, like from a marketing perspective, having a
lower resolution, high refresh, not 4K, because it runs at 1080.
But I still think that's something that personally I think they wouldn't do, based on previous. I mean, I'd love if they did that. I very much doubt it, though.
Yeah. Well, we can always hope. That's the best way. I like to look at it as hope.
I really don't want to come across too negative on the device, which I feel like I might be coming across. But as I said, for me, doing what I do, like having the privilege of using many different smartphones, I like to come across. I like to look at things objectively. I like look in the pros as well as the cons. And I've seen a lot of people praise the Sony cameras, and I think I've taken some great shots in this. I've taken some great shots in this. No, understandably so, because you can get some really good shots on this. And like the focus that you were talking about, unmatched. You can't get it on any of the smartphone right now, and that's something that I love. But at the same time, I think it's also very important to kind of emphasize that, and something that I'm going to be talking about in my video in a bit more. Well, I mean, I think we've gone into quite a lot of detail here anyway, but also the conversation with Fisher as well. I think we're going to be touching on a lot of points, because for me, it's like, okay, if you are going to be putting down $1,200 for this, if you are going to be, then I really want to let you know what you're going to be, what to expect, right? And if you are somebody who really appreciates that Sony Alpha experience, you want that on a smartphone, and you want that 21:9 aspect ratio, that 4K display, then fair enough, that's what you're gonna go for. But otherwise, there are lots of things like, I'm glad you mentioned that front-facing camera issue and things like that as well, because, there is a lot of room for improvement. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yes, no, definitely. And we're definitely all very much looking forward to seeing the video. I definitely have my notifications turned on. If you guys don't, please make sure to turn on the notifications for SAF as well as the channel here. I do want to say a quick thank you very much to Hrishikesh Kasar. Hopefully I'm saying that.
I think it's a silent H, so it'd be Rishikesh.
Rishikesh Kasar. Thank you very much, brother. And another one as well from Mr. Comer. Let me see if I can find that one. Actually, we got a lot of comments coming in from the actual feed here. If I can find Mr. Comer, I can't find. Oh, I think it expired. There was another super sticker from Mr. Comer. I want to say thank you very much on that one as well. So there's one thing that I did want to touch base with you. Sorry, I'll go ahead and do this one. See, I can dismiss it. We talked a lot about the Xperia 1 Mark II. A lot of good things, obviously. Well, there's actually a lot to be talked about, because there are things that you can kind of go back and forth on. Now, at the same time as the Xperia 1 Mark II was announced, there was another Xperia that Sony talked about. At least for us in the US, it seems like it's going to be coming to Verizon from what we've seen. It's the Xperia Pro, which I felt like was purely marketed towards creators. Like seriously, the number one feature that I'm looking forward to there is HDMI in, not out. It's in. So have you heard much on it? Have you thought about it? Are you, because it sounded like Fisher was excited about it as much as I am.
Fisher was very excited about it because I mean, Fisher was like, you know, again, we were having this conversation. He's like, he was going through all of this, and then he found out about the Pro later, and that's, you know, similar experience to what I had, and you know, it is very exciting. It's definitely something that I want to check out. And you know, like you mentioned, the HDMI in, that's something that we've not seen. So it's very, very interesting. Yeah.
And millimeter. So for us, at least, if nothing else, it's millimeter wave supported technology. It's for the speeds of 5G. The true what people when they think of 5G, they're thinking of like ridiculous speeds, which is what Verizon offers. It's from what I remember seeing somewhere. I think was it that they were using it as a mounted display on top of an actual camera. It's to me, it's something like, again, creator streaming, content creation, content consumption. It seems like it has a lot of the. I think from what we saw essentially is it seemed like it was basically a brother or the older brother of what the Xperia 1 Mark II was going to be. So to me, those are the things that I'm excited to hopefully see. We haven't heard any word about it. There's not even.
Yeah.
It's all quiet on the Western Front kind of thing for us here. But
I mean, one thing that I'd like to see is, I mean, if Sony, you know, they have time with that in terms of the software side of things. Now, every single content creator I know, every single one, whether it's myself, you know, Fisher, or anybody else, right? As well as, you know, shooting that, you know, things like when we're at events, whatever it is, we also use a lot of social media. So, you know, things like Instagram stories and things like that. So that's an area that I'd love for them. If you are making a device for a content creator, you need to understand that content creator. Every content creator I know, like, you know, I mentioned, you know, Peter McKinnon earlier on, you know, yes, he has his pro things that he does, but at the same time, he's also going to be posting on Instagram stories. At the same time, you know, he's going to be using these other features. It might not be a vlog, right? But it might just be a quick piece to camera, a quick live stream. And these are things that I think, you know, if you're looking at a content creator, I think you need to kind of look at, okay, what does a content creator do, right? I think these days, if you're looking at a filmmaker, a full-on filmmaker, and even filmmakers, right? I see them all now venturing out in the social media world, and you know, it's so important to have all of these things. Like you want something that can do everything for you. And you know, like one of the reasons why the iPhone is my go-to for a lot of video is because not only does it take really good quality video from the rear-facing cameras, it also takes great quality video from the front-facing camera. And
absolutely,
and it's very consistent.
So that was the thing. The color science between the front-facing, the back-facing sensor is exactly the same. You can jump between lenses, and from the wide angle to the stand focal to everything stays the same. You look like you seriously are just cropping from the same lens.
Yeah.
And iPhone is, for me, is a standard. I actually use some of I use an iPhone, the 11 Pro Max for some of my B-roll. Even the SE, the tiny little $399 SE, can shoot some pretty decent footage out of the back sensor. It's something that I think Apple or the Apple ecosystem has done very well, which I really hope Pixel can catch up to, because where Google can do great things with computational photography it stops at photography. They need more work on the video side, which I feel like it's hard to do post-processing when you're shooting you know what I mean? The horsepower isn't just there.
I think you hit the nail. You know, you really hit on a really good point right now. Is you know, a lot of people ask me what's the best smartphone camera, and I'm like, to me,
what do you use it for?
Yeah, the camera is, to me personally, is an overall experience. When I'm talking about cameras on smartphones, I'm talking about versatility.
Yeah,
Google Pixel does not have an ultra-wide camera. Straight away, it's losing a lot of points. I'm talking about photos. I'm talking about videos. I'm talking about the front-facing camera. I'm talking about the rear-facing cameras. I'm talking about cameras as a package, right? So now with the Pixel, I still really love the look of Pixel photos, right? So if you tell me, what am I going to pick, the iPhone or the Pixel for photos, for selfies, I would pick the Pixel. The problem is, that's where it stops. The Google Pixel is a great smartphone for photos And even that, I'd put an asterisk next to because you don't get an ultra wide camera, right?
Yep.
And then when it comes to video, that's when things really start to struggle. You don't have the 4K from the front-facing camera as you do in the rear-facing camera. Right now, I don't vlog too often, but I shot a bit of a vlog. It was a bit of a travel vlog when we could travel. Remember those days?
Well, such a long time ago, my friend. Back in the olden days, yes.
Back in the olden days. But I shot so much from the front-facing camera on the iPhone. Mm-hmm. And then I also had shots from the rear-facing camera, and I put those together, and they just, because everything was 4K, everything mm-hmm. was at the consistent frame rate. So 4K, I could do 60 on all of these. Another point I want to mention on the Xperia, you mentioned 4K 60 frames a second. I can only do that from the primary camera.
And only in Cinema Pro. You can't do 4K
only in
60
Cinema Pro.
Exactly. 4K 30 is the most on the
so if you want to do 4K 60 on the other cameras, then you can't, even in the Pro app. So
even in the Pro, 4K 30 maxes. Again. Yeah.
So it's just like, I know not everybody uses 4K 60. Personally speaking, it's very occasional that I use 4K 60, mm-hmm. but I like having the option, because sometimes if I want to shoot a bit of B-roll and I want to just slow it down to 50%, because yes, I know we have the slow-mo modes, and let's be honest, on smartphones, even though you can get sometimes good results on slow-mo, the quality suffers a lot, right?
Quite a bit, yes.
Yeah. Now, if you're shooting 4K 60 and then you slow that down even to 50%, it still looks really, really good, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this is something that, on the occasional times, but then now I'm only limited to the primary camera when I'm using 4K 60, and it's something that's on other smartphones as well. And it's something that, again, that consistency that Apple works on. If you can shoot 4K 60 stabilized on all the rear-facing cameras, then you can also do it on the front-facing camera. And that's something that, I think, which is why the iPhone cameras are the most popular cameras, not just smartphone cameras full stop in the world.
No, absolutely. And one of the things like I said, it's if I had to shoot video and I have access to multiple devices, I know I'll grab the iPhone mostly because of that. It's that consistency, and it's the I know exactly what I'm going to get. There's no question about it, and I don't have to find the phone that only does 60 on, as you said, with one lens. LG did a really good job this year with bringing in 4K 60 on the front as well as the back, so they did some improvements as well. I feel like it's hard. The Android ecosystem will always give you some, but not all, and it'll give you, or they'll give you a lot in one area, but not enough in some other area. So for me, with kind of the Xperia line of 20 right now, at least from what we have, we only have the Xperia 1 Mark II in 2020. We don't have any of the others. And with the Pro, all we know is what we kind of saw online, as far as, the potential, benefit of having bringing in HDMI with high connectivity, to me screams streaming, right? That to me, there's like, you're giving me fast internet connection, and you're giving me the ability of connecting my A7 III to it as an HDMI in. Boy, am I going to be, those are the things that my mind jumps whenever I think of the Pro. So we'll have to see, hopefully, when that comes out. The Xperia 1 Mark II, to me, so I'm definitely getting it. It's something that I feel, not because I have the 1 and the 5 and I want to get the Mark II. It's something that I appreciate, and I had such a small amount of time with it. I literally had maybe 2 weeks, week and a half, almost 2 weeks max. And we in the US had access to it, like I said, 2 months ahead of when it's coming out. So it's a long wait. But yes, so looking forward to seeing that video from you. Just to let you know, I think Matt Tyler, one of our really good followers here, he picked it up from O2. He did confirm that it was O2 for not 3 for $7.99, and I'm assuming it. I think it's a contract. I'm not familiar with subsidies in the UK, if they do it the same way they do it for us here.
I mean, I'll definitely look into that.
Yeah, but for $7.99, and I think they had. Oh, and speaking of it, you guys have access to all of the colors. We don't.
Oh, really?
we get the single. Yeah. We only get one color. And I think you guys had access to I think you guys are the purple one and the white one. And then Matt mentioned that there was even a unique color to O2, which was a mirror finish. So it was more of a silver mirrorish finish, very similar to the material you have on the color that you have on your glasses. But with that, I do want to actually, our friend that kind of gave us that initial super sticker, Rajesh, had a quick question. What is the difference between the manual camera features on the Mark II and the ones provided by Samsung Pro mode on some of the manual camera or the iPhone? So if you can elaborate on that one, because I think he's feeding back into that comment that you made just a few minutes ago.
So from what I found, the differences that you have in particular are autofocus and the burst. So what you can get on the Sony using the Pro apps in person, what I found that you can't get on other Pro apps is those two things, because the all-eye autofocus is very, very, I mean, like seeing that box follow you around the eye. And I haven't seen this because obviously, you know, it's the front-facing camera, it doesn't have that. But like I remember when I was using the ZV-1, even through my sunglasses, it was picking up my eyes, because I'm assuming what it's using is not just the you know, it's using lots of other stuff in the background. Well, but even through my sunglasses, it was picking up my eyes, and you were saying, you know, tracking your pets and things like that. So, and the burst, being able to get that focus. So say if you're trying to capture something that's very high action, somebody's running across, you know, getting that the burst of 20 shots and still having them in focus, that's something that you're going to be able to get in the Pro apps. Apart from that, like from everything that I've seen in my experience, I'm not sure if I've missed anything out, but I can still get those with other Pro apps such as Filmic Pro, which I believe is the most popular when it comes to video, at least on you know, if you want something with Pro controls on something like an iPhone. It's also available on Android. Again, it's not free. You do have to pay around £15 or $15 for it, but you know, it does offer you a lot of controls. Again, the Samsung inbuilt app, we do now have Video Pro, which we didn't have for some time. So, you know, the update has come out on some of the older devices as well, such as the Note 10 from last year, and you now do have that control. So, yeah, I mean, for me, those are the two things that I found, the autofocus and the burst. What about you?
So for me, when I saw, so the autofocusing that we were talking about was, yes, and I agree with you, where we can actually we're getting better at with more devices that support better focusing on faces. Because I think, like you said, that not only does it actually work with the fact that it knows where your face is, it actually kind of sees the shape, right? So it knows roughly where the eyes are. They know that people wear glasses. It compensates for that. Where I found it that it exceeded the most with the Sony is when I started to take pictures of my cats. Pets are notorious for just not, they're worse than, I'm not going to say they're worse than kids. By comparison, my son, asking my son to stand still for a picture and getting a good picture out of him is like very rare. And you know, for most parents, they'll attribute to the,
it's impossible.
They don't like it. They you know, at one stage of their life, they're great at taking pictures. They look at you, smile, and give you that beautiful thing. And then one day that switch turns on. And he's like, "Are you done? I'm done." Huh? Okay, and they walk away. Yeah. That's the benefit. I feel like that it works great. I know, and with pets, I autofocus on a cat. I was like, what? And it was my cat was moving, and those. I mean, if you appreciate that, I'm not saying everybody's going to be taking pictures of the cats or, you know, other animals. But when it did come to having the fact that we do have a Pro mode in video, which is something that I think a lot of us did miss with Samsung devices. A lot of cameras, a lot of apps come with Pro mode for photography, which is great. But video is where you need most of the heavy lifting in Pro mode, because you do want to be able to set your stage. If you're on you know, at a sunset, or if you're in an experience where you're trying to get a little bit more of a darker tones into the image, or you're trying to just raise the, you know, the white balance and correct it, and maybe add some more, you know, raise the exposure a little bit. So those are the things. I feel like Sony's bringing it, but I feel like Samsung is definitely, I would say, it just has more of a broad range. I think the camera on Samsung devices are more, they appeal to a wider range. I think that's the best way for me to see it. Sony's very much in that Sony lane, and part of me likes the fact that they're doubling down on what they do and they do best, and they're improving it. But I feel like you said before, they need a little bit more to get to that nice finish line where we can start saying, look, you're exceeding now in that this is generation 2. My hope is that we'll see some more improvements up there. But again, it still wouldn't stop me from putting my money behind a pre-order and trying to pick up either a purple. I'll have to import the purple one. There's no way to bring it in from the US, but it's like either the purple one or even the Stormtrooper edition, I like to call them. I've been going with the white and black on most of my things. It's just,
oh, nice.
It's an interesting.
It's a nice thing to have. Nice. Just one thing to add to that as well. I think the other thing that you get is the interface is very Sony alpha. So if you are somebody who's used to that interface,
the menu system. Oh my God. Yeah.
I mean, but like, the whole control setup and everything, it's very, very Sony alpha. And along with the dedicated shutter button, which you can half press for focus and things like that, I think that's what really you get with, the Xperia 1 Mark II. But, for somebody like me, I can happily use something like the iPhone or another phone, which has an amazing auto mode which does everything else, and then I can get the pro features if I am that niche, which I am, to download something like Filmic Pro for $15 and have that control over exposure, white balance, focus, manually focusing and things like that. Because I mean, even right now today I posted a bit of a shock because I wanted to get the droplets on my window while it was raining in the background. Now
I saw that.
Using the default app, it's just not going to focus because it's just going to be focusing on straight through the glass.
Exactly.
I use Filmic Pro. I can then pull the focus onto the droplets, and now I can start recording. And I can record at a higher bitrate than the default camera app. I can record with WAV and things like that. And, that's what I really appreciate about those. If you ask me personally, would I get something like the Sony just for those features, which I can, get, let's say, a certain percentage of 80%, shall we say? I would personally go with something else. That's me.
Nope. Hey, but that's the thing. Again, that's the beauty of it, is that we have the selection, we have the ability of picking out what works for us and for the features that we get. And by the way, I do recommend, if you've never tried it, to definitely check out. I think with the Android side, you're able to download it and try it out for a few. I think was it 15-20 minutes before you're still able to get your refund on it if you want to try it on your device. Filmic Pro is definitely it's worth it to try to see the possibilities the things that you could do with it that your standard camera app doesn't have. And I do want to say thank you to Greg. I thought you left, Greg. I appreciate you, man, for the super chat right there. Everybody's in the live stream is very, very happy and obviously engaged with our conversations. With that, speaking of the iPhone, we kind of touched on that a lot. Throughout the conversation over Xperia, the big event that had just happened, the WWDC online only, I would say the best produced online only. I don't know.
So polished.
I was like, when I saw that, I'm like, who directed it? Spielberg? I mean, come on. Like, you know what I mean? There's no stuttering, the jump cuts, the going from upstairs, downstairs.
Transitions. Wow. Like, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, Apple has really set the bar high for live streams and events.
They're like, hold my water. Yeah, let me show you how to do it.
I mean, with this, the first online only, I think they really needed to, really set the bar that, look, we can do this like better than pretty much everybody else out there. And I think, as much as I really did miss, like, I remember I was like kind of checking memories from WWDC last year, and I was there with Khalifa, because this is actually interesting. Me and Khalifa.
Oh yeah, Khalifa, yeah.
We were there on Eid Day. So we were away from our families. I found a gathering to pray Eid Salah, and then me and Khalifa got together for a bit of an Eid lunch. We thought we don't want to celebrate Eid completely on our own, so let's get together and have a lunch. And it was really nice. We kind of sat down at a cafe and we had lunch. And the one thing we were saying there was, how much we miss being with our families on Eid. And I was speaking to Khalifa for Eid that just went, and he was like, "Hey bro, our wish came true." So alhamdulillah, I can't complain.
There's always a silver lining.
There is always a silver lining, unfortunately, but I mean, it was something that like last year, it was so good. Like the atmosphere and the environment there is just, it's just something else. Like we've been to Google I/O together and things like that. Just that energy that you get being there,
creative energy. It's there's no way to describe it. If there's a way to supercharge your creativity, is put you in a room with creatives, just in any form. Like, not even if you're in the same realm. You and I, when we were at I/O last year, actually, that was one of the biggest conversation I had with Khalifa last year. I met Khalifa at Samsung's Unpacked in 2019, but he and I never really got close till I/O. Because of him, I started an Arabic channel. He looked at me and he said, He said, Tarek, you speak Arabic. Why don't you have an Arabic channel? Why is your channel only in English?
We spoke about this,
yeah, it was like a duh moment for me. I don't know how to explain it. It was like in front of me, but I didn't see it. And I did, and I took his advice, and I've been, alhamdulillah, been kind of working that. Those are my two main focuses right now, basically. English channel, which I am very, very thankful for everybody that obviously in the chat, as well as, I think without the English channel, I don't think my opportunities would have been as they are today. Knowing you, having even some of your counsel, last time you and I hung out here in was it at the end of the year, right before the Qualcomm Summit?
Yeah, December time.
To me,
that burger we had, man, that burger, that halal burger, so good.
Absolutely, like hands down, a gem in Santa Monica that I would have never. I've been to Santa Monica like 1,000 times.
Thanks to David Kogan.
Again,
he's the one who found it. He's the one who found it.
Yeah, no, exactly. But those are the things. Those are the opportunities, and I feel like being in that environment, being at I/O, being even at the Apple, WWDC, these are priceless experiences that just feed off of each other. That's the best way to put it.
Totally. Now, having said that, there is also a lot of pressure involved as well. So one of the things that, at the last year WWDC, what usually happens is once the event is over, there's usually a dinner which everybody gets together for. Now, we couldn't do that because all the content creators, because the setup for all of these events is very much in the mindset of journalists. Journalists, don't get me wrong, don't want to take any credit away. Their work is obviously very difficult, but once they've written an article and got it, they can kind of relax for a little bit. Creating a video takes much longer than writing, right? And again, that's not taking anything away from written articles.
It's a different medium. It's a different, visual always, medium. Visual
it always takes longer. Now, one of the things that we always have is, we always have to skip dinner because the pressure is so high to turn around that content, to live tweet with a laptop, while you're in this event. You kind of like, the pressure is very, very high, and something that a lot of us have talked about as well. And one of the things was covering the event, live tweeting about the event was so much easier sitting on my desk, being plugged in, being able to get everything. Like, I missed out so much at the event in terms of live tweeting, and people are like, "Oh, you didn't tweet about this," and it's like, I can't. Like, I've got 3 devices here on my lap. One's gonna fall anytime right now.
Only 2 hands, and not. I haven't mastered that one.
But I mean, Apple did cover it, I think, the best way they could have, and it was obviously nothing's going to beat the in-person experience, but I think they handled it very well.
Yeah, no, and the fact that the beta was also released right as expected, very, very quickly right after. I chose not to install the beta on my 11 Pro Max. I installed it only on my SE, mostly because it's a beta. I kind of been playing with betas with Android 11 as well. So I installed it like on the Find X2 Pro. It's not 100% on the Find X2 Pro. So there was, like the phone reboots every once in a while. So I tend to not install betas on a main device. Always secondary. And for me, the SE is more of a review kind of a thing. So very excited. Some of the cool things that I saw there, as I said at the beginning of the inspired by Android. Inspired, heavily inspired, heavily.
I mean, let's not, we don't need to sugarcoat it. Let's be real here. As we've seen, a lot of the features are very much replicas of what we've seen in Android right now, and I think that's something that's not necessarily a bad thing, because there's a lot of features. I mean, Android in itself, arguably is I'm not sure if you read the article where Steve Jobs actually swore that he would fight Android till the day he died, because he was so angry that they had just copied the system, right? From what he felt. I know others would argue, but I mean, what you find is when it gets to that level, when you've got giants like Apple and Android, there is no doubt going to be crossover, and there's going to be lots of features that we see on Apple that, like I've been hearing about an Android equivalent to AirDrop, which we still have not seen right now, and an Android equivalent to iMessage, which we've still not seen for a long time.
Yeah.
So there is going to be that crossover, but let's be real here. It is what it is. Yes, they do get very heavily inspired, shall we say, and there were a lot of features. Yeah, and there were a lot of features. I mean, Android itself, like a lot of people criticize Samsung for their UI and things like that, right? But a lot of Samsung features that we've seen, picture in picture, has been there for ages, right? Things like screen recording, which have been on many devices for ages, come to Android a lot later in terms of the actual build of Android. So they're not necessarily Android innovations. They are Samsung innovations. They're OnePlus innovations. They're other skin innovations.
Exactly. Oppo. It's Oppo. It's Xiaomi or any, like even the split screen. If we were really going backwards, split screen on Android on the Note devices started with Note. It waited how many years before Google incorporated it into it?
Yeah.
I really hope that screen recording does stay in Android 11. As again with Android 10, we saw it in the beta, but it went away when the final version came out. I like so from my impressions of from what they did with the announcement, as far as the visual the differences, obviously there's a lot of things that were done under the hood from a development standpoint. I'm happy that we finally have widgets on the home screen, the ability of putting them in. There are limitations there. It's not exactly a one-to-one to Android. You don't have a way of putting it anywhere you want. You cannot put that in the center.
I mean, something that I always say on my iPhone is that like I have to line up all my icons. I'll show you an empty screen here, right?
Yeah.
Those icons I still have to reach up to. Now, people usually say, "Oh, why don't you just use reachability?" But I don't want to do that extra step. Why can't I have these at the bottom? So then the space at the top is empty. I mean, it makes more sense because it's a lot more reachable. And again, with widgets, if I had a widget on here, it would be snapped to the top. It would not be here. So yeah, let's again be real here. The widget experience, I would say, is still not as flexible as what we've got on Android for sure.
Exactly, but I feel like at the very, very least, we're starting to move in that direction.
Of course.
The organization of the app drawer, that to me was like, finally. It's the, for me, it's one thing that not that I don't appreciate MIUI. So MIUI is, in general, doesn't include an app drawer for me, right? Unless you go with the Poco launcher or anything like that. So those things have always been like, why can't we organize? Why do I have to have a page of full folders as opposed to me just organizing things automatically? So that feature I felt like was really nice. And obviously that's not something that we have in Android, but MIUI replicates that a little bit in their launcher, in the Poco launcher. So that part was exciting. The widget was fun to see. I like the new translation function that they're trying to bring in. I think it's nice. The less not intrusive, but less visually present Siri is also interesting. Although I was watching Marquez's video with the interview.
Same.
Yeah, it's still actually it's actually, by the way, it's a great interview. If you guys haven't had a chance to check it out, Marquez's commentary right after every question, I felt like kind of tied it up. It's not just a straight conversation where you're watching; you're kind of getting his commentary between questions. There's a point, obviously, not being able to interact with the environment behind Siri as you're talking to her. That's an interesting thing because it looks like it's less minimalistic, but in reality, it still covers. So those are things I appreciate. I can't wait to see how they finalize and they polish everything off because it is still a beta. There's still some issues here. It's not 100%. But my question that I was trying to figure out from you is what was your favorite announced feature that you saw that maybe you're excited to maybe try out on your phone in the future when the beta is out? Well,
I mean, widgets, I think for me, because that's something, as I said, like I find quite frustrating where I just have pages and pages and the apps that I don't use, I have to like try to drag them all the way to, like I really like the, like the layouts right now. And it's something that, as phones get bigger, I want I want widgets like, I always have my calendar. And I always want to have a quick glance on my calendar without having to press an extra button because, I'm really bad with timing. And, thankfully I made this one on time, but it's just like, there's been so many.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
But it's nice to have that glance beforehand. And, I think, having my calendar widget on my iPhone along the top where I can, and, I'm actually going to use widgets to push other icons down.
Oh, you know what? That's a great way to do it. Exactly. Yeah,
so,
it fills up.
So I'm gonna put like a top big widget. So then that way, because let's be real here, if you have an icon that's all the way at the top, like you know, yes, you can use reachability on all the rest of it, right? But it's just far out of reach. So if you look at my Android setup is always, I have my most used icons here. I have some of the ones that I don't use all the time, a little bit to the sort, and then at the top I'll have my widgets. I'll have my calendar and things like that, which I just want to have a look at a glance. So I'm going to be using it for that. So I really like the widget side of things. I really like the picture-in-picture, and it's something I'm hoping will come, kind of trickle down to third-party apps as well, like YouTube, because that's one of the things that I really enjoy. Like, I'll be watching a video on YouTube, but at the same time I'll be scrolling Twitter, right? And that's something that I really enjoy in the Android experience, that I have that picture-in-picture. But again, 95% of the videos that I watch are on YouTube. So, when Apple had the picture-in-picture feature, I was like, okay, is this going to, come down to third-party apps, which it is, but when is it going to come to YouTube? And that was my sort of question, like what I'm thinking, because then that's going to make my experience on iPhone much better, because then I can be watching a video and being able to resize the video as well. Make it bigger and smaller.
With that, the approach I felt was better than what we saw with Android, because Android, you have to catch the edge. With Android 11 beta, you have to catch the edge of the video and then slide it down to get it bigger. Yeah, I think iPhone did it better. Pinch to zoom. Yeah. That's the way to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and putting it off to the side if you still want to carry on with the audio, but you want it fully. You don't want it to. And I think Apple is really good at doing things like that. So that's something that I'm really looking forward to checking out as well, for sure.
Yes. And as far as I know right now, the only way to get YouTube to work is if you're using it in Safari. So if you turn on the video in Safari, you're able to turn it on, but it does. So on the mobile phone, on the iPhone, if you're trying to do that and you have the the YouTube app installed, when you click the video in Safari, it automatically opens the YouTube app, which defeats the whole purpose. Yeah. But I feel like we'll have to see how. Obviously, I think it's also on YouTube's side. It's not just Apple.
Yeah. So
because YouTube needs to turn on that option in the.
So as far as I'm aware, as with everything, Apple kind of announces these features. They're built into their native apps, such as
Apple
TV and
it
Safari,
works with Disney Plus as well. So
Disney, but it's going to then when the APIs get released in other, and I'm sure with the amount of people who watch YouTube on iPhones, by the time we get the public release, then we'll have that on YouTube as well, and that's something that I'm really looking forward to, because my setup is I do watch a lot of video on my smartphone, and I also like to do other things while maybe like just scrolling through Instagram, or just having something like a podcast playing in the background. But I don't always only listen to podcasts. I like to see them. Like, for instance, Marquez's video was almost a podcast. You didn't necessarily need to be watching it, but I still like to see that, right? But at the same time, it doesn't need to be taking up my full screen. So that's something that I'm quite excited about, and I'm glad that's come to Apple on iOS.
So I just got a question that really interesting question. Did you? I assume you already have No, you do have the P40 Plus, right? Pro Plus.
P40 Pro Plus. I do have it. Yes.
The longest title in the world. Yes. Sorry. No, it is. It's a great device. I'm actually working up my video.
Very good smartphone.
It definitely, and it's some good improvements over the standard one. Mr. Comer is asking, what do you guys think about or feel about the P40 Pro Plus camera and video when compared, as again, from the experience that you saw with it? I'm not talking specifically, obviously, with the ultra zoom or the periscope cameras, but the overall usage of the camera. I feel like Huawei, in general, over the years, has been pushing camera photography or mobile cameras technology. If anything, they started with the triple camera setup. Now we're obviously seeing iPhones with triple camera setups. Android obviously follows suit.
Night mode.
Exactly. Night mode, like ridiculous night mode, which is something that is very Huawei. Like when you get a Huawei device, or even some of the newer Honor devices now, that night mode is built into not only the main sensor, but the multiple sensors that you have. You can go to wide angle and so on. What do you think as far as some of the things that we've seen? Like, I mean, the P40 Pro and the P40 Pro Plus, I'm assuming they're already, the P40 Pro is already out in Europe, right? And I think the P40 Pro Plus is coming out, or is it out
end of June? Yeah, I think it's somewhere around now is when it's going to be officially releasing. But yeah, I've had it for a few weeks now.
Yep.
I think Huawei, I always say this because a lot of people have because of the current situation, unfortunately, a lot of people have a negative view of Huawei. And I'm like, look, whether you love or hate Huawei, whether you love or hate them being here makes things better for everybody because they really push the bar when it comes to competition. You mentioned a few of these things. They were the first to do those, right? Yep. And, Chinese devices traditionally have had a bit of a reputation where it's a copy device, right? Mm-hmm. It looks exactly like an iPhone or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But Huawei, let's be real here. They've innovated so well, and they've invested so much into research and development that a lot of features that you enjoy on your current smartphone, whatever it is, thanks to Huawei, right? Because they really push the bar there. So whether you like them or not, whether you're going to buy a Huawei device or not, having them in the market really pushes the competition forward. And I think, especially in the photography side of things, I remember when night mode first came out on the P20 Pro, and I was just like blown away at how good the results were in comparison to anything else out there. And with the P40 Pro, personally, the P40 Pro is the one for me. I think and I love that silver frost finish. And it's something funny that we were talking about Marquez earlier. His video title for the P40 Pro was "Here's what we should copy." I loved how he did that because, again, at the same time, as I said, whether you love or hate Huawei, them being in the market is such a good thing for consumers, full stop, because it pushes other manufacturers to really up their game as well. Now, coming back to the P40 Pro, cameras are really good. Now, I want to put an emphasis on the front-facing cameras because traditionally, especially in our world of tech reviews, we've criticized Huawei front-facing cameras, and we've said, man, that beauty mode is just, I hate it. You put it down all the way, it still smoothens your face.
Exactly.
Now, I totally understand why that is, because the Asia market is very different in what they want to what we want, right?
Exactly.
As far as again, I'm not speaking on behalf of the Asian market because obviously I'm not in that market. But from what I know and from what I've learned speaking to a lot of people, is these features are very popular in the Asian market. Now, Huawei being a Chinese company is obviously going to prioritize those features and it's going to include those. What I love is Huawei has been taking feedback on board. And, I have lots of conversations with Huawei and, I find that a lot of it is being taken on board because now when you pull up the front-facing camera for the first time, it asks you, do you want smoothing or no? And I was just like, thank you.
Finally,
I obviously switched it off, right? Now, and having those two cameras, I absolutely loved the cameras on the S10 Plus with the pill cuts out. I don't mind the pill cut out because the edge detection on portrait mode was on point. And again, when you come to the Huawei P40 Pro, when you put the selfie cameras up against others, the shots that you get are so crisp, so sharp, and the edges are so just the edge detection is so on point. I'm just like, wow, colors are, there's no softening applied. Colors are very, very neutral. They're not overly saturated or anything like that. So for me, front-facing camera, I've said this before, but in my opinion, it has the best selfie camera on a smartphone right now. I would say what comes close is the Pixel. But again, I think the Pixel, when it comes to that portrait photography, it does kind of struggle a little bit on the edges because it just has that single camera. Rear-facing cameras, again, zoom really good. I would like the ultra wide to be wider. It's not as wide as other smartphones, so that's something that I would like. Primary camera is really, really good. The larger sensor size really does help. Low light's great. I like the zoom. Zoom, obviously, Huawei again, periscope zoom technology. They were the first to it. They do that really, really well.
It's what the P series is known for, by the way. It
is what it's known for. Yeah.
Exactly.
I would like, however, the software interface to improve, and it's something that I've briefly talked about before. But one of the things that I found was if I want to skip between the primary the ultra wide and the zoom cameras, you've got this slider. So sometimes you tap on the ultra wide, and you might not be all the way ultra wide because it's kind of picked.
It depends where you hit. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Now, what I prefer is, like, I think, software wise, the interface, iPhone does it really well. The other thing that I don't like is, if I'm shooting the camera like this, then the controls are at the bottom here, so I have to kind of reach over for those controls on the Huawei. Whereas on the iPhone and the likes, I have them all here. You know what I mean?
Right next to the shutter button
quickly, and then I can just tap and switch between those if I want that transitional effect, right? And that's an area that I think Huawei can improve on. They've been improving, and I'm sure they will take that feedback on board and improve. But yeah, overall, in terms of the cameras, I think they are very, very good, very comparable, and exceed the competition in many ways as well. Are they perfect? No smartphone camera is perfect right now, and there's definitely room for improvement.
No, absolutely. And I feel like, so I was at the P40 Pro launch event in Paris. That was it was a very pleasant surprise because I was in Paris for vacation with the family, and happens to be the same week. And it's like, hey, can I come? I came,
nice.
Since then, but I've also used Huawei for years before. It helps the ecosystem thrive. It helps move the ecosystem in the right direction. Because of some of the technologies that they put in there and what they're able to provide there. So with the current situation, obviously access to this type of hardware may be different, especially stateside where we are. We don't have them. We always have to import them. But I've had basically a good opportunity to be able to be part of the group that does have access to those devices. So I'm very happy with that. I'm also playing around with the new Honor 30 Pro Plus.
You got it.
That's just, you gotta, otherwise it's a different Honor, which was the other one also, like another one that we're playing around. But I feel like it's, and I'm also loving the fact that Honor is starting to get a lot more of the features from Huawei devices a lot sooner. We're not having to wear through that generational upgrade on there. So definitely love the fact that they're in there. Always appreciate having them in the conversation, especially when it comes to this type of tech. And last year, I think I had the opportunity to go to their campus in Shenzhen, and it's a beautiful campus. To see some of their R&D facilities and so on, just to see the amount of work that they put in, it's definitely very, very nice. And again, hopefully we'll have more opportunities to talk more. I'm working on a video for the P40 Pro Plus, hopefully within the next week or so. I just received the fast charger, which was my last piece that I was waiting for. The 40-watt fast charger, which by the way only works on the Pro Plus model. The standard Pro is 27, which is fast, but not 40. So we're talking, so with that, I realize I took a lot of your time. I don't want to, intrude too much, but what's coming up with you? What's going on? Obviously other than the Xperia video, you said within the next couple of days, what are something else that people can be looking forward to seeing from you?
So I'm kind of really playing it by ear at the moment. Considering it is the lockdown, the content is not as frequent, should we say, as it has been. I've also been, spending a lot more time gaming, which has been interesting.
No, dude, I appreciate the engagement. It's obviously not in front of a lot of people, but we see a lot of the clips on Instagram and on Twitter. All these, as you call them, selected shots, but I call them those. Those are the epic shots that you do want to share.
Yeah. But there's going to be more content coming on the channel. As I said, my setup has always been very simple. I kind of play things as they come. I don't plan too much ahead because things now in this industry do change a lot. But you can expect more camera comparisons, more coverage as and when new devices come out. Nothing in particular that I can, specific that I can really hit on right now. But there's going to be lots more fun content. I'm currently, aiming for 1 or 2 videos a week. So that's kind of what you can expect right now. But on social, like I'm always, I'm really enjoying the creative process on, things like Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. It's been fun trying to explore different mediums because once you've made tech videos for as long as we have, it's always nice to explore different avenues and kind of explore more creative ways of making content for sure.
Absolutely. And so speaking of TikTok a little bit, I did want to touch base with you a little bit on that.
Yeah, sure.
That was something that you recently started getting into. Do you feel like we have a presence in or how can we thrive in the because there's obviously the side of TikTok which everybody sees, and I think we both have parlayed into those the fun videos there. Which, by the way, I love your version of the wipe.
Yeah.
Where you do the wipe, but you also do the the other personality, which also you did the same thing with your time travel bit with the LG. So
yeah.
The creativity, I feel like if nothing else, that's one great part of this, is the fact that we're having to be able to push our medium. Do you feel like TikTok is something that will be something that we can work in as far as or being able to put more content tech related, specifically tech, not necessarily dancing and the wave, and it's more my son's department.
This is something that I've spoken about before, because I always say this: don't let the reputation of a platform determine the content that I'll be making, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If we rewind 10 years, YouTube had a reputation for prank and cat videos.
Yeah.
If at the time we said, we're not going to go into this YouTube because it's full of these people doing these, I don't want to do, then we would never be where we are right now, right? So I think it's very one-dimensional to kind of see a platform for what, you think it is without actually experiencing it. So, as soon as you open TikTok, fair enough, you do get a lot of the dancing videos and stuff. But once you start following the creators and you start interacting, obviously the algorithm picks up what you like, right?
Absolutely,
and you see some of the creativity that I've seen on there has been like mind-blowing. And you were talking about the multiple personalities and things. So one of the people that I follow a lot is Zach King, and I absolutely love his videos, and the creativity in his videos is just mind-blowing how he does some of the things, right? Just kind of looking at that, and now if you look at that, is that dancing videos that you see on TikTok? No, absolutely not. It's something very different. And I've been seeing lots of like photography videos of people sharing tips and tricks of how to get some really creative shots on photography. And I'm just like, wow, this is really interesting. Now, speaking of the tech space, so I was speaking to brother Faisal Al-Saif, and he's doing really well on TikTok, right? And he posts a lot of very simple unboxing videos and things like that, and they're doing really, really well. And I was speaking to him, and he was just like, Saf, look, you're thinking too much into it. Just be creative. It doesn't need to be super high production. And this kind of comes back to smartphone photography and videography, right? You can achieve so much just with your smartphones, and you see the creativity on there. And I'm just I'm somebody who like I've never tried to just make, okay, I'm just going to make standard tech content. Like I try to be creative in my thumbnails. I try to do things a little bit different, and that's something that really appealed to TikTok for me. And I always say this, especially to new up and coming creators, is don't put all your eggs in one basket. We've seen YouTube, really go to a point where it's just like sometimes you're fighting with the algorithm. You're limited to what you can create because of what the algorithm will and will not recommend to your viewers. And I think yesterday Dimitri from Hardware Canucks kind of tweeted this, where YouTube sent out a survey for creators. It's almost like a satisfaction survey. The first question is, what category does your YouTube channel come into? There's no technology there as an option, right? Yeah. And it's just like, and that just goes to show that, being in the space that we're in, we are at the mercy of these platforms, right? If YouTube, as they've done many times before, I know lots of family content creators, and I know that the whole debate of family content is a bigger one when it comes to advertising and child safety and things like that, which we won't get into here. But a lot of them were going from doing really well, and now the revenue just off just like that, right? And to me, what that says is, look, YouTube, I'm very, very grateful for. Without it, I would not be here speaking to you. I wouldn't be traveling the world and things like that. And I'm very, very grateful for YouTube as a platform. But at the same time, by just being, just just being limited to YouTube itself, you are, you're at a very high risk, because if tomorrow something was to change, if tomorrow something was to happen, then, you'd be very limited in what you could do, right? So for me, it's always been very important to diversify your content. And, I always say this as well. If you treat a social media platform as an extension of another, that's all it'll ever be. It'll just be an extension to that platform. It will not be something on its, in its own right. And that's something that I realized a few years ago. And, right now, if you look at my Instagram, yes, I post tech, but a lot of my followers on Instagram don't even follow me on YouTube, right? They follow me because of my Instagram content. And that's something that I think is so, so important. So TikTok to me is an extension to that. It is the fastest growing social media platform right now. And I think it's very important for us as tech reviewers to kind of really take advantage of that and explore different avenues of, not just for revenue, but just as a creative outflow, and to gain different audiences as well, and really diversify what we do.
Yeah, no, to me, it's another medium that you need to kind of keep in mind. It's not necessarily it's to me, it's just the way TikTok picked up and the way it became very available, very, very big in a very big way, in a very quick way. I started consuming and enjoying it mostly just for I feel like it's a time warp. I turn it on and in 30 minutes disappear. Very bad for production. If you're ever doing any kind of work, don't turn on the app. But I love the fact that when I started putting tech things into it, that I realized that there was also a demand for it. That was one of the big things for me. Now, on both ends, I see some of the comments as well. There's always going to be a pro and con towards TikTok. Not everybody's a big fan of TikTok as an app. I look at it as another medium. I think it's a great medium to be in there. I mean, I think we saw Instagram, Instagram Live kind of go through, or Instagram TV, but I think now that's more of on the side. We don't know where that's going to be. Just like you said, don't put your eggs in one basket, and kind of get things in there. And I see, Matt Tyler. I see Juan Carlos is in the comments. I just noticed that one of his comments coming up here as well. It's always good to have. And then one of the main things I definitely appreciate is that you're venturing into different mediums. You're not necessarily keeping yourself in one. So with that being said, I appreciate obviously a lot of the things that are coming up from your channel, as well as, so we'll look forward to that video for the Xperia camera review. If you haven't checked out, also he did the video with the P40 Pro Plus, and I think it was against the S20 Ultra 5G, right? Yeah. So that was also battle. That came. Yeah. No. And I feel like it's nice to have. I feel like it's just the mode that we probably will always use to show, but not necessarily to take a picture of, because it never produces like the crisp image that you wanted. But I've seen it where it at least gets me close enough. I think at 10x, the Pro Plus is definitely very, very good. And that's really where I feel like a lot of people will benefit from that. So it's one of those things I appreciate so very much. And I didn't get a chance to hit up with a lot of different comments here. So here's Juan Carlos, the answer, Mr. Rough out there for YouTubers these days. It's hard. It's an ecosystem that we don't really have that much control over. You're right.
Oh yeah.
We wake up tomorrow and there's a new rule that talks about,
exactly.
we can't wink in our videos and something.
No, this is the thing, and I think it's so important, and and it's something that I think all of us have experienced to a certain degree. It's just that YouTube, they're getting better, but their communication is really bad as well. They prioritize watch time, and at the end of the day, it's a business, and that's the way they're going to see it. And we are just some very, very, very tiny clogs in their massive system. And if me and you stop making videos tomorrow, if all the tech reviewers in this space start making videos tomorrow, YouTube's still going to continue on absolutely fine. And this is the thing, and they know that as well. And I think that's obviously a risk as a content creator of putting all your eggs in one basket. So it's so important. And this is something I know there's probably lots of aspiring and upcoming content creators on here, and that's something that I always say: try to diversify. Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
No, for sure. And then I'm trying to see real quick before, because we're hitting that 2-hour mark, and I do appreciate you staying with us.
Of course, anytime.
Throughout the comments, and trying to see if there's chat. Oh, okay, exclusive. Oh, somebody's mentioning possibly a Red exclusive, YouTube Red exclusive for you. Maybe a good, like what Marquez is doing with, Retro Tech. I think that would be something exciting to see.
Oh yeah, I mean, from a creative point, like I was so happy to see that with Marquez, such an awesome guy, such a great content creator, and seeing him have that sort of exclusive series. What I did like with him is that he didn't make it exclusive. So yes, you could watch all the episodes at once if you were, a YouTube Premium member, but you could still see them every week, and that's something that he really pushed for, and I really appreciate that because he didn't like kind of forget the fans and the followers in that process. But having that kind of budget and that creative freedom to really make content that's different, creative, something that I would love to hopefully do down the line. We'll see.
Definitely. And somebody just mentioned to me. Sorry, we'll see. Great. So people are acting like the live chat is an airport. No one cares about the live chat today is very polarized. Let's put it that way. We covered a few subjects that are one side or the other, and usually it's a little bit more. I don't know if it's like more like single lane, but I like to cover both sides. It's not a Android only, iOS only, but many different ecosystems and environments. But somebody did remind me that at the end of every live stream, it started 2 live streams ago. It's called the TK Inception. I don't know if you've seen that before yet. It's what happens essentially is there's a feature here. So let's go ahead and bring it in. So this is the second screen on my display. As you can see it right there on the right side, and it looks normal, right? It doesn't have any problem. So let's go ahead and I'll remove it from the live feed. I'm going to move it into it, and okay, guys, it's about to happen. And here we are.
Wow.
It's a visual effect of just being able to obviously capture the screen where my live stream is in. So TK Inception has become part of the live stream every week.
Amazing.
And I appreciate, let me just take that one, stop that screen and go back into normal mode. Yes, no, I appreciate you joining us on the live stream. I appreciate everybody in the live stream as well. Gary, Juan Carlos, Matt Tyler, of course. And again, I'm very happy Matt did get a chance to pick up his Xperia 1 Mark II. We'll look forward again with more content. Juan Carlos has, I think, the LG Velvet that he's also working on. So if you guys haven't checked that out, check out. And I think I'm assuming you got yours, I think it was in part of that last unboxing that you did?
Yeah, it's unboxing time. I just got it. Not spent too much time with it, completely honest.
We'll
hopefully get to check it out soon.
I'm in line waiting for the US side to see. There was a very limited number of units that were sent. So we're kind of like the reverse where, some PR will never make sense to me. I'll leave it there. Yeah. I'll leave it there. With that being said, let everybody know if you. I mean, I'm sure everybody knows exactly where you are, but if you want to maybe just plug in the different outlets that you're in order of existence, maybe. Where can people find you?
I'm pretty much everywhere online, so it's just SuperSaf. Thankfully, it's very consistent now. YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. For those of you who are on there. Nobody's forcing you to be on there. Don't get me wrong.
No. Exactly.
If you don't want to be there, it's absolutely fine. It's freedom of choice. It's absolutely fine. But if you are on there, then I'm at SuperSaf. But yeah,
super. And I'm very, very, very happy that you have that it's consistent across. Because for me, it's TK Bay over on YouTube, but it's TK DSL 8655 on other channels. Very, very interesting concept going on.
Let's have a chat about this afterwards.
Yes, I think I need a refresher. We need to have another one. And thanks to Gary the Fireman. Thank you very much for the super chat. Appreciate your support and being in the live stream as well. And Abhijan, gosh, appreciate it. So you reminded me again to do the Inception. He's always my check at the end of the live stream. He's like, TK Inception, got to get it in.
Nice one.
And with that being said, thank you guys again for spending your time with us on Saturday. Thank you to Saf. I'm very, very sure we'll talk again, and we'll definitely circle back. And,
sure.
I appreciate your help and your guidance over the years. Let's put it in very mildly. You're an amazing source of not only inspiration, but it also helps me aspire to kind of get closer to what you do. And I've learned a lot over the years. So thank you very much. And
That means a lot, man. That means a lot. Thank you so much for having me. It's been fun chatting. It's been fun to see you, bro. We've seen to the face for some time. So thank you so much for having me. And yeah, we'll definitely do this again sometime, man.
Absolutely. And for everybody else in the live stream, be safe, be good to each other, and have a good rest of the weekend. As usual, I like to make sure everybody knows Matt, Tyler, and Sam will have their live chat tomorrow. The Across the Pond cast will be available tomorrow. It's a great show. If you haven't had to check it out, Saf, I usually retweet it every Sunday. Great. A couple of guys, a UK and a US guy, just talk back and forth. Very chill. Let's put it that way. Very, very chill.
Right, and cool. Looking forward to checking it out.
Couple of good guys, and we'll see you guys next week. Be safe. The audio version of this podcast will be up hopefully within the next hour, as soon as StreamYard ends processing this video. See you guys next time.
Take care.
Take care. And